Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So in this video I want to show you the most important thing you need to learn as a damage dealer in Neverwinter if you want to be playing any endgame content and you want to be getting that top damage. And if you're running master content, this really becomes a requirement if you want to be holding your own and carrying your own weight with your position in the team by outputting an adequate amount of damage. You have to be taking advantage of artifact calls. If you are not, if you're doing it incorrectly, you shall perform pretty terribly. So we're going to discuss everything that entails. An artifact call, what is it? Well, it's a 10-second time window where all your damage gets pretty much nearly tripled. Depending, of course, on your group and if it's a trial or a dungeon. Sometimes it can just be doubled. Now, without this window, master content it becomes, not even achievable. You have to be doing this strategy because that's how the content is balanced around. Coordinating your team, organizing who uses what, and optimizing it so that you output the most amount of damage in burst windows, and then you can end up killing your boss. Now, during this 10-second window, that's when you use your big hits. You have a daily power, which takes about 60 seconds to get, depending on the class, and you have a mount power, which also has just a flat 60-second cooldown. The majority of classes will have a daily power with like over 2,000 magnitude you can use against the boss, plus then everybody having a mount combat power, which is going to have like 3,000 magnitude, or currently the bugged one, Wicked Lich, which effectively has higher if the enemy doesn't deflect. So you're dealing at least 5,000 more magnitude in that 10 seconds, and you want to be taking advantage of basically getting that damage multiplied by like 3. And that is what an artifact call is. That 10-second window where all your damage becomes massively multiplied. And if you don't take advantage of it correctly, well, you're going to fall behind massively. And that's why you save your mount power. You save your daily power for the right time. You don't just use it whenever it's off cooldown. But again, you will have to run with the right group who is coordinating themselves for an artifact call. But even then, if you're just by yourself, you can create your own little artifact call. And what do I mean by this? Well, an artifact call is adequately named because you're using your artifacts. These are in your enchantments page here. And you'll use your primary one. And the best thing that everybody should use is an artifact that is going to decrease the enemy's resistance or increase the damage they take. There are a lot of options. You see them here. The Demogorgon's Reach, you're making them take increased damage per tentacle they get hit by up to actual 24%. It's a bit bugged there. Halaster's Blast Scepter, reducing their resistance by 15%, which is exactly the same as just increasing your damage against them. Dragonbone Blades, 12%. Lantern, 10%. And there's a lot of other 10% options here as well, with some lower 7.5%. And so it's really important to know what they are. And this is the list here. If you're creating a 10-man party, you want to have everybody using one of these. You cannot have people using the exact same one because they won't stack. Like 2 Halisters will have no impact. You'll only gain the benefit of one of them. So you only use one. And that's why there's a lot of options you can use, and you need to stack them all together. Also be aware that the Wyvern Knives and the Dragonbone Blades will not stack together. Only use either or in the group. Same with Lantern and Spelljammer. Only use either or. So again, having just 10 of these, you add up the amount of damage you're increasing, and you're already over 126%. Now, since healers and tanks aren't there to like deal damage, they won't have their characters optimized to do that. They want to be running a combat power that's not going to be dealing damage, but also supporting the team. Again, like Eclipse the Lion can increase the damage the target takes by 15%. Your T-Rex can do the same, 15%. Again, the same ones will not stack on top of each other. There'll be no effect if you use 2 of the exact same powers. So the list is here, and if you just have 4, like combination of healers and tanks, so 2 healers, 2 tanks, you would have these top 4 used, increasing everybody's damage with the Pegasus and then increasing everybody's damage against the target with those other mount combat powers. So if you're missing out on that artifact call, you're going to be far behind in damage versus everybody else, because they'll be hitting for like 10 million plus on their mount power and their daily power, versus you only hitting for like 2 to 3 million. Yeah, you create a massive gap. So it is really important you learn what an artifact call is and actually take advantage of it. When you're just alone, you still ideally want to run an artifact that's going to increase your damage against the target. This is again still in party content. If you're in solo content, well, that doesn't matter too much, and I just run envenomed and you're killing everything so quickly, whatever. In party content, you can still go and use your artifact and then go ahead and use your daily power and your mount combat power while that effect of the artifact is active, and you will be getting a bump up in damage as well. Also trying to squeeze out as many encounter powers as you can during this window, and that's where a bonus like Tactician's Precision comes in. You use that daily power and you're immediately cutting down your cooldowns of your encounter powers, allowing you to cast them again, very likely within the duration of that artifact. However, it's not as simple as just, using everything immediately after the artifact call has been called, per se. You're going to want to like use your artifact as soon as it is called, and then maybe wait a few seconds, use like your encounters which you're going to be able to use with tacticians, then go ahead and use your burst, and then that's it. You need to wait a few seconds for the ideal moment in an artifact call. Nobody is perfect, and this is where this comes in. There is like the best 5 seconds in an artifact call, because those artifacts normally last about 10 seconds each. There are some exceptions which last like 15 seconds, and the Demogorgon Reach will take 6 seconds to charge up. That's why generally the person who calls artifacts wants to be using Demogorgon's Reach, so they can use it like a second before they call, and then it'll have that time to ramp up and then provide the 24% when everybody is in the middle of the artifact call. And so you have this kind of sweet spot here where it's basically like, 4 seconds, 5 seconds after the artifact is actually being called. Usually the caller will immediately press the artifact when they actually call artifacts, and then people will take a split second to react. Some will be in the middle of doing something and end up being delayed a little bit before they actually use theirs. And then you need that window, you need that little bit of time before you end up with the peak time in the artifact where you'll get like double to triple damage, and that's when you use your big hits. So your daily power, your mount power wants to be squeezed in this nice sweet spot. So that's why if you're not the one calling artifacts, then just as soon as it is called, do your best to cast your artifact immediately, then wait like until it says 56, and then use like your mount power, your daily power, and all the rest of your burst. It will depend on what class you are, what rotation you want, but you want to be making sure you have everything for that sweet spot about 5 seconds after someone has called artifacts. Some classes like the cleric DPS will ideally want everybody to use their artifacts exactly at the same moment because they need the full 10 seconds to do all their damage, but they still will have that sweet spot of when they use like their mount power, they'll use it like in the middle of their rotation because that's the time when you'll have the maximum amount of debuffs. So the better you can have this grouped tight together, and the longer you can have all the debuffs together, the better it is. But again, there's always human error. There's always sometimes mechanics one person needs to play and will end up getting delayed by, nearly up to 5 seconds there sometimes. And so there will be this time where everybody has those effects up, and then they'll taper off towards the end, the last 5 seconds. Supports as well, like healers and tanks, they need to be casting both their mount power and their artifact for that artifact call so that they gain those debuffs on the target. And so if they have to cast both of them, again, there's that little bit delay between casting the artifact and the mount. Ultimately, you really need to learn how to do this for endgame. You need to expect that these will be a thing, particularly again in master content. Even outside of master content, I highly recommend getting used to doing this. Don't just use your daily power as soon as it is off cooldown. It is not worth it in most cases. wait until like that time where you can use like your debuffs. You can get like your artifact, whatever that is there. It could even be the crystal here where you gain an additional damage boost when you cast this. And then you want to be using like Power's Ray of Enfeeblement for the extra damage booster as well. And if you have Vec now, you will want to use it slightly before your daily power so that you'll increase your daily power. So on Wizard here, for example, you'll be using your artifact, then like your Chill Strike, Repel, few at-wills, Ray, Mount Power, Daily Power, Icy Rays, Repel, Chill Strike, and that's pretty much your artifact call. Again, we waited a few seconds before using the Mount Power and then using our Daily Power right after it, just so that you have that little bit of time for everybody to get their artifacts cast. And if it's right at the beginning of the boss fight, you might want still that few seconds to get some stacks from certain gear pieces where you may need them, like from the armor. But hopefully this is somewhat insightful to you guys and really drives home why you want to be learning what artifact calls are and how best to take advantage of them. Certain classes will have certain different rotations. I recommend paying attention to some builds and guides. And if they don't talk about artifact calls, well, that's not really a end game build. That's not really a guide orientated for master content. Because without artifact calls, you will not be completing most of the master content. It's designed around maximizing your damage. And if you're not doing that, well, you're not playing the game properly. With that said, a massive thank you to all of these channel members for their added support, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.